Welcome everybody to the session today. Today what we're going to do is I'm going to walk you through a little bit of talk about what the Adobe Document Cloud SDKs are, and then I'm going to dive right in and show you how you can get started with those SDKs. As we're also going through here, please feel free to take advantage of the Q&A chat pod within Zoom to ask any of your questions and even queue them up. And I will go back and make sure that we answer all of those as part of the session here. So to get started here, one of the big goals of the Document Cloud SDK is to address some of the needs that people have around PDFs. Now, PDFs are what we call the lingua franca of document exchanges, that universal format that everybody can open up those documents across all devices, all platforms, and so forth. And it is a standard for all of the different types of documents that people have, whether it's for legal standing, it is the accepted format for people when they're talking about the digital equivalent of paper, but also it has a lot of other functionality, like being able to have things like forms and all the different things that you would want to do, and that people have the habit of going file print to do something on paper. PDF has the mechanisms to be able to do that in a digital way and do that in a way that it is better than paper. So as we're going through this, some of the challenges, everybody has opened up a PDF in the world, but the challenges that people have is that on the developer side, you start running into challenges. One, with more and more websites that you have online, the PDFs become kind of a disconnect in how to control the experience within a website. So often you usually click on a link to view a PDF, and that will view within a browser or download to your computer, and that doesn't allow you to control that on a website. So that's one challenge that people have with PDFs. The second thing is that PDFs oftentimes don't have the same analytics that people might have with things like Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics on a website, and that causes challenges for people. The other thing is that there's a lot of content that is in PDF format that you may want to have, say, on a website, but you have the challenges of if you have to redesign that and convert that into HTML, that means a longer development cycle. It'd be great if you could just drop that right into the website, which we're going to see a little bit today. The next thing is that a lot of businesses have a huge amount of PDFs and they need to do things with it. For example, they might want to take those PDFs, and that might be the only copy that they have of that document. And they want to convert that back into a format like Word or other things easily using services and APIs. And then the other challenge that we also see in the developer world is that there are a lot of PDF libraries out there, and some of them can be very difficult and complex. And really our goal as part of Document Cloud SDKs is to help solve some of these challenges. So basically what our Document Cloud SDKs are you probably already are familiar with some or many of our first-party apps. Things like Acrobat Reader is probably on your machine right now for opening up and viewing PDFs. But there's also other tools that are available on mobile devices as well as desktop, like Adobe Sign, Acrobat Mobile, Adobe Scan, which are all of our different apps for, as an individual, to be able to easily get the most out of the documents that they have in PDF format. What Document Cloud SDK is basically taking those different tools that you have within the first-party apps, like being able to view PDFs, be able to create them, combine them, export them into different formats, review and annotate, OCR, and so forth, and taking those tools and making them as SDKs and services so that you can integrate them into any of the applications that you're building. So Document Cloud SDK is separated into essentially two components. One is what we call the View SDK. The View SDK is our easy tools for being able to take a PDF and be able to embed that directly onto a web page. And along with that, also giving you things like events so that you can take that information and extend that experience as well. The second part is the Services Sdks, which is really those actions for being able to create, combine, export, and so forth that we make available as SDKs in different languages, including things like Java, JavaScript, and C#. View SDK is all client-side HTML, JavaScript that you can embed right onto a website. So to get started with this, it's actually really easy. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to switch over to my web browser here, and I am going to go over to adobe.io. Adobe.io is the central place for you to be able to access any of the Adobe APIs across our different applications. But as we go through here, if we scroll down here, we'll go down to where it says Adobe Document Cloud SDK. We'll click on Learn More here. And this brings us to our site within adobe.io. You can see up here we have the View SDK, the Services Sdk, our documentation, and where we can get started with getting our authentication and so forth. So let's start with the View SDK. So within the View SDK here, I'm going to go down here. We're actually going to click on the Try the Demo here. Now, one of the great things about the demo is it's actually a nifty development tool as well for you to help accelerate some of your code. So here we can see that as I'm looking at the different embed modes here, this is rendering a PDF client side within the web page here. Right inside of here. So we're not having to jump to a separate window. We're not having to jump to a separate UI in order to view this PDF. You'll also notice that if you're familiar with opening up PDFs and things like Acrobat Reader, you'll notice things like we have our page thumbnails, we'll have our bookmarks. If there's bookmarks in the PDF, they'll show up there on the left sidebar here. Also in the top right, we have things like our annotation tools. So being able to add our chat tool, our annotations to the document. So let's say, for example, comment, we can say post, and it drops that post into there. Along with that, there's also things like replies. So we can say reply comment, and you can have a reply to a comment that was previously stated there. We also have things like the highlighting annotation tools. So you can highlight text here, as well as you can also even draw in here as well. Now, there's if you're going to search, you want to search inside of a document, you can go and click on the search button here, and it will search in the document, as we can see right in here. Now, you have a couple of different ways that you can embed the PDF view into a web page here. We have the full window here. We have our sized container, which basically is like a window for like a presentation that you can have a person, jump through here. We have our inline, which what it does is it takes each of the different pages in the PDF and it'll render them one after another. And this is a great way of being able to embed a PDF view directly into a web page, and it will actually be seamless. So to the viewer, it would be hard for them to distinguish what is HTML that was written on the page and what is actually the frame with the PDF in there. The final one that's also an option here is the lightbox. So that means that if you're, say, on a web page and you have this little button on the web page, you can click on that button and it'll create a lightbox view of that PDF above your web page there. Now, the other nice thing about the demo here is if we click on the customize, actually, let's just go back here and I'm going to switch back to the full window here. One of the things that the customize allows you to do is allows you to turn on and off the different features. So for example, if I want to hide the annotation tools, I can hide the annotation tools. If I want to hide the left pane, prevent someone from being able to download a PDF. So for example, here we have that button for downloading PDF. If I uncheck that, it removes that button. We can also choose to remove the print PDF option, the page controls, etc. So all of these configurations, when you go down and click on generate code here, right behind me, what it does is it actually generates the code preview here that you can then now copy and paste into your web page, and it will render that PDF in that web page. The one thing that you're going to need to do is you're going to need to get a client ID, and you're just going to need to drop that into there. But once you do that, that takes that code and allows you to be able to drop that into a web page. So it's a super easy way to be able to drop a view of a PDF into a web page. Now, if I go back to adobe.io here, and I go over to Get Started, what this will do is this will allow me to get started with getting my credentials for both View SDK and Services Sdk. So in this case, I'm going to go and click on New Credentials here. I'm already logged into my Adobe ID, but if you do not have an Adobe ID, then go on and register. It's free. And we can select DC View SDK. We can give a credentials name. So we're going to call this Topcoder Demo. And you will have to specify the domain that is associated with where you're going to embed this. So if you're going to run something on a local server, you can put in localhost. If you're going to run something on a website, then you would specify the domain, and it ties that key to that specific domain. So once I go in and create the credentials here, what it'll give back to me is then this client ID here, which I copy that. And that's exactly what would go into my embed code here, into my client ID here. So once you do that, then that will render. It's that simple to utilize that the View SDK for that. So once you have that there, then what you want to do is you want to it's not, you can simply embed that into the web page, but what more can we do? So let's go back to Adobe I/O again here, and we're going to switch to documentation. And here is where we can get all the information that we need for View SDK and Services Sdk. So I click on DC View SDK here. There's a number of different options and events that you can actually track within here. So if we just look at the basics to start here, we can see that it walks through things like embedding a PDF viewer. You can drop the main script up here in your head, and then you can render your PDF, and that is based on the ID of the tag that you specify. You can pass the content of a PDF based on whether it's a URL. So let's say I have it hosted on my web server. I can specify the URL in there. Or what I could do is I could set a promise, and I could pass the file blob into the content if I am having a service render and provide back that PDF content. So along with that, if there is some token-based authentication that you need to manage in order to get the PDF document, it does also support the ability for you to specify the headers to get that authentication into that system there. Now, as we and there's more stuff in there. You can see the different embed modes and details there. Here we can see inside the code that as part of your parameters, you specify the embed mode, and you would put that in there. And then as we go up here, let's jump ahead here. So those are some of the basics. A couple of other important things I want to also call out is the first one is callbacks and workflows. So one of the first things is that Sign supports callbacks. So for things like when a person clicks on, after they annotate a document, and they click on the Save button, that is a callback that you can specify so that then you could run the JavaScript code that you want to happen. For example, if you wanted to write that back to a service, you can write that JavaScript code for that. Or if or you could also specify the user profile information. So if we look at inside of here, and I added my annotation, let's reload here. When we add our annotation, like this here, it says guest here. So you can specify that by using the get user profile callback. And the get user, as well as you can do the get user settings and set user settings to specify that information. The other thing also important here is that you can also set the language. So here we can see in the listing here, any of the UI elements that are in here, we have multiple different languages that we actually support, and it will change the whole UI of the view embed mode when you do that. So the next thing is you can also control some of the UI customizations as well. So for example, we saw before in the demo that you can configure things like whether you add and remove the left panel and things like that. And this is basically where you would specify that in your options here. But as we scroll down, you see that there's also, here are a number of the different options that are available. There's also a form filling option. So if the PDF has actual interactive form fields in it, you can enable form filling, and it'll allow a person to be able to fill out the form fields in that PDF. Along with that, you see the where we can specify the user profile here, and we have the we're setting the user profile that we can then set as part of our callback, as I was mentioning before. You can also set things like, if we jump ahead here, I'm gonna scroll back up here for a second. All right, so the next thing that we can also do is if we go to the Viewer API here, the Viewer API allows you to get, it allows you to control the viewer. So things like you can get the PDF metadata, the XMP metadata that's stored inside of the PDF. You can, if you have text that is selected in the content, you can, of the PDF, you can grab that using this file promise, You can also set the cursor of where you want the cursor to be located. So if you need to explicitly direct it to a person, you can direct it a person to a certain place, a current page. You can set the page zoom. You can go to a specific location. You can enable or disable text selection. So in a scenario where you have perhaps maybe a secure document that you don't want people copying text, well, then you can also disable that based on these options here. And then the other thing that's also really powerful is being able to control things like the comments and markup. So as we switch to that here, what we can do is we can choose things like, we have our annotation API that allows you to then control things like, if you want to add an annotation to a PDF, we have our annotation schema here that you can specify that information, set where the coordinates are, and it'll drop that onto the PDF based on that JavaScript command. So here we have the example of this that we specify in here. And then we can also, there's a lot of things that are not exposed within the demo in there, but you can set things like the binding box, the color, the stroke, the opacity, and all those types of settings of that annotation when it gets dropped in there. So once you do that, you can specify, the bounding box, where that is. As we jump ahead here, then the way that you apply that is using the annotation interface that you can basically set here and say, get Annotation Manager, and then you're running whatever the action is that you want to do, whether it's add the annotation and so forth. You could get an annotation, add annotations, delete annotations, update an annotation if you already have one that is already placed on there. The other thing you could also do is you can register callbacks so that when a person adds an annotation to that PDF, maybe you want to have that trigger to update a system and notify that. You can set up that callback to do that, and we can see that as part of the information here. So it's very easy to collect information from the annotations, add annotations, all via events and our JavaScript API is part of that. So one other really cool feature with this is the analytics, or another way of looking at it is the events associated with that. So Adobe has its own analytics suite called Adobe Analytics that we have a native pre-built integration into there. However, if you're using other analytics tools like Google Analytics, or you want to create your own charts within a web page, then if we scroll down to default analytics here, we can see some of the different events that are available here. So when a document opens, when a page is viewed, when a bookmark is clicked, when they click on a hyperlink, when they search for something, when they copy text, all of these different events, it provides that event data to know that information, so that then you could add a layer of stuff on top of that within the web page, or you can push that to other systems, or you can also use this to then push that into analytics so that you can know what are the different events that happen as part of that session. The other thing that you can also do here is if we scroll down to some of the file preview events, you can even get even more granular how a person is interacting with that document. So for example, if they use any keystrokes, you can track those events. If they scroll on the page, if they click on the page, if they double click, if they move the mouse, what's the current active page? All of these are events that you can use to then track and utilize that within your application. And so this gives a really, really powerful tool that it's not just about viewing a PDF, but it's allowing you to have all the tools at your fingertips to be able to create whatever you want as part of that PDF viewing experience, and trigger, use those events to trigger whatever experiences you want to layer on top or to notify your analytics tools. So in summary, View SDK, just come into adobe.io. You can go to Get Started to get your key. You can use the demo to get started with creating that quick little thing that you can embed into your web page, and then go into the documentation and see all the little areas that you can use to expand that viewing experience on that web page. So the next thing that I would like to do is I'd like to take a second, and I'm going to have a look at some of the open questions that we have here. So Myth asked, callback would be a good way to handle button clicks for the buttons rendered inside the PDF. This is huge because the PDF already the king of presentation. With this, it moves from passive to active on the web. That's true, although I will tell you that right now, buttons aren't entirely supported within PDFs, mainly because traditionally PDFs have used embedded JavaScript inside of those PDFs. And right now, our viewer, for security reasons, doesn't support the JavaScript as part of those buttons. But that is something that we want to get to. But in the meantime, you could use those events to be able to do similar things with buttons. All right, next question. I am sending custom Adobe events via Google Analytics in my app, but somehow my Google Analytics Behavior Events tab shows nothing. Any troubleshooting tips? I don't actually have any specific taking which is the, there is a, there's usually a code in here. So if we take like the register callback here, one of the things that that I usually do is I take that and I throw that into my console, which can indicate if there's any specific challenges with certain certain events. But if you have any specific questions, please feel free to shoot me a question as part of some of the contact information over here, and I'd be happy to see if I can get a more precise answer for what you're looking for. All right, so what we're going to do next is we're going to go on to the Services SDK. So as I mentioned, the Services SDK is really around those different actions that you want to take on a PDF to manipulate that. So if we go over to our documentation, we're going to go over to Services SDK here. So the first thing is that we can see under the how-tos here some of the different actions that are available. So create a PDF from static HTML. So if you have HTML and you pass that into the service, it'll convert that and pass back a PDF from that. If you want to take HTML that also is linked to JavaScript, it does also support that. So for example, one thing that I've done in the past is use like jQuery on a web page. I want to be able to have that pull, say, values from like a JSON file or a data a data file. Fortunately, there's actually an example right inside of here that you can use to get that. So here we have the JSON for us to merge in here, and this walks through each of the different steps from configuring your PDF options in here, getting your credentials, and so forth. All of that is all walked through in here, and we have it in each of the languages of Node, .NET, and Java. So if you want to get started with these, we can go and click on Get Started again here. And when we create our credentials, it is going to, let's wait for it to load for a second. Like we saw before, it gives us the option of either using the View SDK or using or creating one for the Services SDK. In this case, we're going to create one for the Services SDK. Looks like it's taking a second here. Wait for the dramatic pause here. Oh, okay. Well, that's not exactly the way that we want that to work. So let's switch here for a second. All right, we're back. All right, so once we're in here, we'll go in and we'll create new credentials. We're on a roll this morning. Okay, so what happens when you click on that, it's going to allow you to generate and download your credentials. And one of the nice things about the way that the credentials are created is that it will prompt you to download your SDK, and it will ask you to choose which language that you want to download it into. So if I switch over here, one of the nice things about that is you don't have to worry about creating your own keys and things like that. It actually takes care of that for you. When you download your SDK package, it'll actually create that authentication key, and it'll include it as part of the zip file that you download. So you can actually get started with the services immediately without having to do anything special or have to deal with authentication. It takes care of all that, includes it to make it easy. So if I switch over here to my code, I'm using the Node.js SDK package here. So one of the first things that I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and say npm install, and it's going to install all my dependencies here. And inside of here, just to walk you through a little bit of what we need here, this DC Services SDK credentials, this is what it embeds into the zip file that gives you the credentials to be able to connect back and forth with the DC services. And here we see that it has all the client ID, client secret stuff in there. But you don't have to create this file. Again, it creates it for you as part of the package. So what we do next is if we look in our resources here, this has a bunch of different sample PDF or Word documents that you can use for reference to get started, so you don't have to go fishing for your own documents as you're looking through it. And under the SRC here, it has different actual scripts for the different actions. So for combining, how do you combine a PDF or combine with page ranges, creating a PDF from a Word document, from a Word doc stream, from a PDF, from an HTML or a PowerPoint file, how to export it into a different format. So all of these different things are available here for you to get started. So if we take, for example, I'm going to copy this script out of my SRC and drop it into my resources here. Sorry, drop it into the root here. And what this is going to do now is, as we look at the actual document, we'll see that essentially it's using the DC Services Node SDK. The first thing that it does is it uses the credentials that are part of the file that we have right here in the source, the root. And it then uses the DC Services SDK to create, in this case, it's going from PDF to a doc file. So it's going to use the export service here to export it. And we can see that we have our credentials, our operation is going to be to create a new file, exporting a PDF into the target format of a Word document. We specify the input here. In this case, it's going to go into the resources folder and specify the export PDF input here. And it's then going to, you start that by using the execute, and it's going to save that out into the output file here. So let's go in here and we're going to run this here. And so this is taking that, that Word document, that PDF document, it uploads it to our service, it converts that, and now it provided back the PDF, the Word document as the original, as the new format of the document. So here we can say, let's open this up on my computer. So now we can see here that I have this Word document that is now, easily re-editable, and the original document was, let's go to our resources. Let's check the export PDF output. Oh, sorry, it is the export PDF input. Export PDF input, so let's open that up. And here we can see that was the original PDF document. And now we have the Word document. So a pretty good conversion of a PDF document back into a Word document there. So as another example here, let's go in and we're going to use the convert the HTML here. So let's go to our source again. And we're going to go to the create PDF, and I'm going to create based on dynamic HTML. So let's copy that. I'm going to bring that into my root here. Now, one of the things that you'll notice when you're using the create PDF from HTML here is that you can go in here and the document that you are sending to the service is a PDF. So here we see that it says create from local file and that we're uploading our zip file to here. So if we now go and look at that zip file, let's pull that up here. Essentially, our zip file is we have our HTML that is here. We have our JavaScript in here. We have our CSS in here. Now, you can also have, so if you're using, say, some JavaScript like a Bootstrap or something like that, that is on a CDN, it will work just fine. Although, you know, like anything where there are cross-domain issues, you could run into those with certain instances. But for the most part, if you do also have hosted things, those will work as well. So in this case, if you had this so that we wanted to bundle it up, if we had images, we would bundle those up all as part of the zip file, and then we would specify that zip file, and it would create the PDF. So now if we take this and we're going to say node create PDF from HTML, that's going to take that zip file that we have, and it's going to upload that zip file. It's going to convert that, provide us back the output here. Wait a second. All right, so now we have that, that PDF in the output. So again, if we look at the output here, it now took that HTML and it rendered that within the PDF here. Now, the size of the page and stuff like that, as we see in here, that's specified as part of our parameters. So we go in here and look at this. In this case, we set the page size to be 8.5 by 11. So that's customizable for you to change the size to what you want. You can also specify in here whether you want to have things like the header or the footer, the page layout, the data, and so forth. So this is all very easy for you to walk through to get some of that information. So if I go back to the getting started, or the documentation page, let's switch back here. We go into our Services SDK. Each one of those different examples, there's also in the SDK that you download, there is the corresponding documentation around here for each of the different languages. So if I look at the this node one, it's also available on here for you to learn about. So that's the Services SDK. So basically, go on to the online getting started. Go ahead and register your key. When you click on the download button inside of there, it will allow you to then take that and it'll include the authentication inside of there. So I want to look at some of the questions here. So sometimes while creating a PDF from HTML, a services API error occurs saying connection timed out. Can you state the possible reasons for it and how to fix it? It's pretty frustrating. I have tried increasing timeout time with client config, but no avail. Interesting. I'm not sure whether it's perhaps a challenge of maybe what you have as the input. So it could be possibly the size might be the result of the timeout. I wonder whether there might if there might be some dependencies on some of the scripts that you have inside of there. But if you have more details on the Services API error, um, if it has more information that it's giving you as part of the debug, um, it's doing it while you're running the samples. So one thing to try is if you are running the samples, make sure that you're running in the root of the folder, and make sure that you have your DC services credentials. So the first thing would be make sure that you have your DC services credentials that is populated in there. So the one in here, and make sure that you also whatever you have as the script inside of SRC, copy it to the root, because that will make sure that the paths to that file and to the resources folders are in there. Otherwise, that's the most common error that I usually see people have. As for usually a timeout, that is something that I don't usually see there. But if you have more information, feel free to shoot me an email or a message on one of the social media platforms, and I can have a deeper look there. With that, does anybody else have any other questions? Okay, well, I'll stay on for the next couple minutes in case there are questions that come up and people are still typing. But for anybody else, thank you for coming to the session today. If you, again, if you have any specific questions, please feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to answer any questions or troubleshoot some issues. But have fun. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys build. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. This has been very helpful and great for everybody. I'm going to also put in the link to our challenge series in here in case you hadn't seen it yet, but definitely check it out. There's challenges running every week with weekly prizes, t-shirts and cash and all that good stuff. So definitely jump in, and then we'll have more challenges coming up as well. Yes, we will post the link to the recording. We'll have it tomorrow posted up, and it'll be on that Adobe website as well that I linked in the chat. One more question just came in the chat, Ben. Will there be more challenges coming up related to this SDK and Topcoder or any other platform?
In short, yes. Stay tuned. The next question that we got is there any point or scenario where a developer has to pay to get certain services? So as part of the way that the service works, there is a free trial that runs, I think it's over 5,000 calls, and I'd have to check there, but that is kind of the scenario which should be just fine for the purpose of this. But once it gets to the level of, say, like a professional deployment, then that'd be something that you would purchase a license for that. But for the purpose of this actual challenge, there shouldn't be any actual purchase for this. And also to that point as well, if you go to the DC services documentation, there's information about the trial versus paid program. It has more details around that. But again, for this, as long as you go in and go to the Get Started and you set up your key, you shouldn't have any issue as part of the exercise.